What if events had unfolded differently in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith? What if there was 4 different outcomes during Battle of the Heroes? What if there was 4 crazy alternate endings to Revenge of the Sith? Well, today, my fellow watchers, is another interactive Star Wars What If, where you have the opportunity to choose your path in the description down below. You have to choose the timestamp, and you will be led to a new outcome that will lead to a new ending. I really appreciate all of the support that I've been given recently. It really means a lot because these videos have been worked on throughout the year, and I'm really glad to finally have them out a little bit before the holiday season so you guys can fully binge watch them. Thanks for tuning in, and I will be looking for some collaborations for some other content creators to come on the channel and maybe do an ending or two with the interactive content. Who would you like to see come on board the MissedThePart channel? I have a few people in mind and I cannot wait to work with them. But thanks for tuning in, and now it is time to choose your destiny. Choice A. What if Anakin Skywalker didn't burn? Mustafar was a burning planet with fire squirting from each corner of the world. The terrain sizzled and smelled of thick smoke. This was the planet Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker fought on. They jumped through the architect of their area, crashed and shattered before their very eyes. By the end of the duel, Anakin and Obi-Wan were mere feet apart. Obi-Wan was on the high ground, staring at the man he viewed as his brother. Anakin was too far gone. His eyes were a shade of gold that pierced through the dark atmosphere of Mustafar. Although Obi-Wan warned Anakin not to do it, Anakin still flipped. Despite Anakin's power, the high ground gave Obi-Wan the natural advantage. When Anakin swung his lightsaber, it didn't hit its mark. Obi-Wan sliced through Anakin's body until there was nothing but his torso left. His limbs fell apart, replaced by air that sent Anakin tumbling to the ground. With the one metal hand he had left, he gripped the gravel and pulled. He managed to halt his slide, landing halfway down the hill and staring at his old master with a burning fury in his eyes. Obi-Wan Kenobi watched as Skywalker struggled to keep himself in place. His metal hand clenched at anything it could, allowing him to stay away from the pit of lava not far beneath him. He felt the heat touch his skin, waving at him as if taunting him. Yet, he never caught on fire. While Obi-Wan poured his heart out, Anakin focused on holding himself in place. It worked. As the time slipped away and Obi-Wan left, Anakin didn't burn. He didn't reach the lava and lose more of himself. When his new master arrived, Anakin was rescued and replaced what was lost with his prosthetic limbs. It took time for him to adjust to the new limbs, but when he did, Anakin Skywalker's face became Darth Vader. Inevitably, Anakin, now Vader, ran into many past Jedi. His old Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, was one of the dozens who recognized the Skywalker face. Ahsoka was horrified and attempted to turn him back to the light. It didn't work. Anakin chose to wear armor, but nothing to cover his face other than his cloak. His armor protected him from the harshness of battle, and with the added mobility his prosthetic limbs gave him, he became a monster in the eyes of the people. He was a legend, a myth, the most feared foe in the galaxy. Eventually, Obi-Wan and Vader had another duel. Vader chased Obi-Wan across the galaxy to hunt him down. They met on a rocky planet, void of any life. Obi-Wan, upon seeing Skywalker's face, was filled with more terror and regret that he had felt in years. Obi-Wan one final time to appeal to his friend. He regretted leaving him on Mustafar all that time ago, and he wished to reconcile. He apologized for failing Anakin but Vader was indifferent to his claims. Since was overflowing with wrath and lust for revenge. Vader and Obi-Wan fought, using the environment to their advantage when they could. Vader was blinded by rage and made mistakes he wouldn't have otherwise, causing Obi-Wan to get the upper hand. However, Obi-Wan cut himself off from the Force and had only just begun the journey to regain that strength. Vader had superior Force abilities and experience. Thanks to this, he came out victorious. Obi-Wan crawled away and continued to apologize for his failures. Vader silently struck him down, putting an end to the Jedi. From there, Luke didn't have his mentor. Uncle Owen, after not hearing from Obi-Wan for quite some time, was partially relieved. He resented Obi-Wan since he feared he'd wrap Luke's mind and create another vision of Vader. Luke remained the impatient boy who longed for a life outside of his home planet. Uncle Owen became even more protective. If a trained Jedi like Obi-Wan had perished, Uncle Owen didn't wish to see the same happen to the boy he viewed as a son. While Leia was fighting in the Resistance, Luke was stuck without escape. Eventually, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen argued over Luke's fate. They both wanted him to stay safe, but they knew that they couldn't tie him down for the rest of his life. They came to the conclusion that Luke could go off-world, but only if they knew of his whereabouts and had a way to contact him. Luke was thankful he had finally got to explore. He took advantage of it while the rebellion was fighting for freedom. Everything seemed fine until one day. Luke accidentally used the Force when one of his friends was in danger. He knew enough about the Empire to know what the Force meant. He ran. He escaped back home, but barely. The Empire was searching for him since a probe droid caught him in the act. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru explained what they could, but the Empire came, and Luke had to flee. The couple were killed in the altercation, Luke running and never looking back. One more, he escaped, testing the limits of his powers. With no mentor, he couldn't train. Luke was lost with no help. Luke became a man scouring the galaxy for help. He never stayed in one place for too long, out of fear. He altered his appearance each time he changed homes, changing his name with it. It became a system until he found the rebels. It took years of planet hopping, but he found them. When they learned of Luke's powers, they were fascinated and helped him set up an area to train. He did. He trained every day, tired of being on the run. Once again, Luke wished for his freedom. He read through all the Jedi texts the rebels could find for him. Any research he could get his hands on, he read. And one day, Luke finally faced Vader, only without a lightsaber. Vader attempted to subdue him, but Luke fought back with the Force. Vader was impressed by Luke's abilities and hunted him down. Luke suffered the consequences for it. He lost his arm in the fight, discovering Vader was his father as well. The rebellion came in time to save him, but many of them didn't make it out alive. There were only 3 survivors, Luke included. From there, Luke got a prosthetic arm and vowed to build his own lightsaber to take on Vader. Choice B. What if Yoda went to Mustafar? When the chaos found the galaxy, Yoda and Obi-Wan teamed up together to stop the darkness from spreading. Obi-Wan begged Yoda to go after Anakin, but Yoda denied, fearing Obi-Wan wouldn't put an end to his friend. The Grand Master wished to fix his own mistakes by seeking out Anakin himself, so that's what he did. While Obi-Wan went to deal with Darth Sidious, Yoda followed Anakin to Mustafar by sneaking on Padme's ship. They met on the battlefield, Yoda begging Skywalker not to succumb to the dark side. It was far too late. Every part of Anakin was lost. What remained was the beginning of Darth Vader, glaring down his new opponent. Yoda never wavered. When the battle commenced, Yoda had advanced agility and force powers that made it difficult for Skywalker to keep up. They fought through the terrain of Mustafar, nearly dying thanks to the harsh environment. Despite Yoda's experience giving him the upper hand, Anakin had raw power that caused Yoda to stumble many times. The battle was far from easy by the time they had reached a flat stretch of burning hot rocks. Yoda was exhausted, as was Anakin. They were bruised and panting, but they never gave up. Then, they clashed once more. Yoda used the rest of his energy. Anakin did the same. They met in the middle of the fiery ground, throwing their swords together until Yoda was victorious. Anakin slumped to the rocks, gone. Yoda didn't know if he could continue his fight for peace. The darkness had already spread so far. Yoda felt how many Jedi had passed due to Sidious's plan. Yoda needed to find Obi-Wan Kenobi and see if his plan succeeded. He departed Mustafar without Anakin's body, figuring they could come back for it later. There was no time for Yoda to drag Anakin all the way to the shuttle. With Obi-Wan's help, they could take Anakin back and decide what would be next to do with him. When Yoda and Obi-Wan met again, he found Obi-Wan in a terrible state both physically and mentally. Bail Organa managed to help Obi-Wan escape, but at the cost of Obi-Wan's physical being. His robes were burnt, likely from the lightning. His fingertips were black and blue, the left side of his face sliced. His eye was cut out, and a giant scar taking its place. Obi-Wan was silent throughout the entire meeting. He had beaten Sidious, but at the cost of himself. Yoda waited to inform him of Anakin's passing. When he told him, Obi-Wan had no reaction, other than his right eye twitching. It seemed as though he was barely there. He needed to catch himself. He needed to breathe for an eternity. Padme was alive and gave birth to 2 twins she could raise. She wished to join Yoda and Obi-Wan to restore order in the galaxy. They were happy to include her in their plans, but it proved more difficult than they thought. While discussing the future of the galaxy, they realized that they had taken out the 2 leaders in charge. Now they had to free the clones and find the hidden Jedi. Obi-Wan regained his spirit. Both Yoda and Obi-Wan scoured the galaxy for the remaining Jedi, using the Force to communicate with any they could find. They found more than they had expected, such as Ahsoka Tano, Cal Kalest, and Kanan Jarrus. With the help of Bail Organa, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi formed their own rebel alliance, while keeping Luke and Leia safe. It took months since the clone army was so vast, but they stormed the Jedi Temple and took out the remaining clones. Many fighters were lost in the process, but they survived. Yoda and the remaining Jedi used their strength to rebuild the Jedi Order, only with better rules. Ahsoka was insisted on having a large role in the rebuild. She was fearful the Jedi would fall back to their old ways, and Yoda assured her they would create a new order together. While building the Jedi from the ground up, the rebellion Yoda formed spread and protected other planets from malicious factions that tried to take advantage of the fallen Jedi Order. Some planets were under the control of pirates and secret organizations that were waiting for the war to finish. Yoda sent the remaining Jedi to the planets under the highest risk of invasion. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Padme, and Ahsoka paid their respects to Anakin Skywalker, burying his body on Naboo. It took years, but they built an order with the help of the new Senate and the rebellion. They created peace and learned from their mistakes. Padme raised the Skywalkers, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan helping when they could. The galaxy was free and under constant protection thanks to the help from many senators and rebel allies such as Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. There were flaws and cracks, but they vowed to handle them together. Choice C. What if Anakin turned back to the light? Golden eyes glowed. Anakin's figure was standing across from Obi-Wan's. He had just arrived after Anakin had choked Padme. It seemed as though Obi-Wan's friend was lost, but Obi-Wan wouldn't give up on him. Obi-Wan took responsibility for Anakin's fall, apologizing over and over for his misdeeds. Anakin was mostly indifferent until Obi-Wan mentioned the future. Anakin wanted to save Padme. Although she was injured on the ground, there was a way to save her, but not if Anakin fell to the dark side. Obi-Wan knew this, and he fought as hard as he could to save his brother. His speech failed. Anakin fought him, and the two clashed while avoiding the lava, squirting at them. The duel lasted longer than they could count. They battled and battled until finally, Obi-Wan gained the high ground. He looked down at his former pupil and turned off his lightsaber. The regret was festering inside his lungs until he couldn't breathe. Obi-Wan refused to fight any longer. Anakin, confused, stared at his master without taking action. Obi-Wan once more appealed to him. His tone was much softer than before. He told him that Padme was dying on the ground and his children could pass as well. Although it was a stretch, he knew it was the only option he had left. That and Ahsoka. He told Anakin Ahsoka was waiting for him, and his actions were killing her too. Every Jedi in person Anakin cared about, Obi-Wan told him. He reminded Anakin of all the death he was causing to save the life of his lover, who was dying anyway. Anakin finally froze and looked around, noticing the flames bursting by his body. He realized how far he had gone and said it was too late. Obi-Wan counseled him, telling him that together they could fix everything and save Padme. Obi-Wan wouldn't let Anakin and Padme hide anymore. They didn't have to flee. They could stay under the protection of a new order, and that they could build it together. Anakin went up to his master and admitted how scared he was. Obi-Wan took his lightsaber out of lack of trust for the man who just force-choked his lover, but he still took the time to reassure Anakin that they'd solve the problem together, and that's what they did. They retreated to the ship after a grueling effort to avoid the lava. Anakin jumped to the higher ground. They got Padme on board and went up to meet with Yoda, who admitted he failed to execute Palpatine. Anakin, enraged, told Yoda that the three of them needed to go back and kill him before he got too much power. While Padme was prepared for birth, the trio decided to take what little resources they had and try again. Obi-Wan reluctantly gave Anakin back his lightsaber and allowed him to go first to see if he was trustworthy. Yoda trusted Anakin first, much to Obi-Wan's surprise. Together they stormed the Senate and found Palpatine. The Emperor was a strong opponent who managed to hold off Yoda, but he couldn't keep up with the three powerful Jedi. The three managed to beat Palpatine. They saved Padme, and Anakin became a father. He was there to help Padme through it all, while Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail planned the next phase of their plan. Anakin joined in the planning shortly after, as did Padme. They wished to save the galaxy and create a new order, free from corruption. They accomplished their goal, Anakin leading the charge to prove he was still on their side. By the time they were able to defeat the clones and all of the other threats to what remained of the Order, Yoda and Obi-Wan agreed that the first step towards justice was having Anakin go on trial for his crimes. When they approached Anakin about it, he understood and agreed. Before putting him on trial, they valued his input. Obi-Wan listened to why Anakin fell into the dark side in the first place, and his heart shattered. There was nothing Obi-Wan wanted more than to save his friend from the darkness, but it was far too late. He already fell and needed punishment for it. Anakin was put on trial as soon as the Senate came together to decide what trials would look like going forward. He was granted a great deal of mercy due to his aid in fixing the galaxy, but it wasn't enough. He was still revoked from ever becoming a Jedi again. His lightsaber taken away. Along with that, he was interrogated for all of the information he had on Darth Sidious and sentenced to 20 years. Many throughout the galaxy thought that the sentence was too light, but Anakin served it without even raising a single complaint. The galaxy was restored with flaws that caused several planets to refuse to re-align with the Republic. They lacked the trust in the Republic, and they lost countless allies. The Republic was born again with much less strength, leading to an uncertain future for Luke and Leia. Choice D. What if Yoda killed Emperor Palpatine? In the Galactic Senate chamber, Yoda and Palpatine were dueling. Yoda was dodging every attack Palpatine sent his way, but it was wearing him down. Yoda knew he needed a new plan rather than dodging, and hoped he'd get a hit in. Although Yoda was powerful, Palpatine was a formidable opponent. Yoda ducked away and took a moment to catch his breath. He observed the room, searching for an advantage. If Yoda could sneak up behind him, he could take him by surprise. The room was spacious and difficult to traverse, but Yoda slipped through the cracks and climbed up Palpatine's position. The unexpected Palpatine was ambushed, Yoda gaining the upper hand. Instead of throwing a repulse pod at Palpatine, Yoda tore up pieces of it and created smaller projectiles to throw. Palpatine was overwhelmed by the sudden attack and got injured by the pieces, but he still pulled through. The fight continued as a lightsaber duel ensued, Yoda spinning and flipping, Palpatine both. Both of them were gifted fighters, and the battle was no easy feat. They both struggled, but Palpatine laughed the entire time. Yoda never lost his nerve, despite Palpatine's cheery attitude. In the end, Yoda managed to defeat the Sith Lord by cutting off his hand that held his lightsaber. Palpatine, enraged, used more of his Force abilities to combat Yoda. Yoda dodged and defeated Palpatine once and for all by decapitating him. With the battle over, Yoda retreated and met up with Bail Organa and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Palpatine was dead and Anakin was left for dead, burning on Mustafar. Padme survived and gave birth, but she was too weak to continue. She rested for a long while, Obi-Wan and Yoda debating what they should do. For the time being, they put the children into hiding. Obi-Wan took Luke to Tatooine, while Bail took Leia. Padme, knowing she was in no fit state to take care of them, agreed to plan after much persuasion. Padme was out of action. Obi-Wan was protecting Luke, and Bail was busy protecting Leia, which left Yoda to do much of the heavy lifting. Yoda took his time studying the patterns of the clone army, along with researching what other problems were rising in the galaxy. Pirates were running free and destroying countless defense lines, transportation ships. Factions were rising from the shadows to combat the clones. There was a rebellion forming to create order in the galaxy. All of these factions clashed and caused a galaxy-wide war. A majority of the planets that once had an alliance with the Republic chose to support the rebellion. But many of the separatist planets stayed neutral or supported new factions rising to combat the rebellion. Yoda joined the rebellion for the fight, and as the rebellion grew, more Jedi who would survive Order 66 joined. Yoda journeyed across the galaxy to find more recruits for their cause. Taking down the seemingly infinite number of clone troopers was nearly impossible. As soon as they took down one squad, 2 more were on the way. It took years of hardship and building, but the rebellion managed to take out the remaining clones. However, they weren't out of the heat yet. They still had new factions to deal with. They were back where they were. There were the planets aligned with the New Republic, and planets aligned with various factions around the galaxy. Those factions made a deal and combined to form one large group under the alliance, the Fallen Empire. It was another more dangerous version of the Clone Wars. People were fighting, not clones or droids. The New Republic had the advantage of Jedi, but the Fallen Empire had strategy and supplies the Republic was cut off from during the Purge. Despite Yoda defeating him, Palpatine still got what he wanted. The Jedi were completely wiped out almost. The Republic was replaced by a much weaker version of it. War was still all over the galaxy for the years to come. Padme was convinced Luke and Leia were the keys, so Obi-Wan and Bail, when they were ready, brought the children back under her care. Padme raised them and had constant surveillance on her. She felt like she was a prisoner, not a home. Although she understood the stakes, she was beginning to see why Anakin felt trapped in the Jedi Order. Regardless of her feelings, she pushed through and raised the next generation, preparing them for their uncertain futures. And that is going to be the 4 choices of this Star Wars interactive video. This is the first one of many on this channel, my fellow watchers. I believe I've been the first person to do interactive fanfictions. I've never seen anybody else really do this style. And if you enjoy it, it's exclusively on this channel. There's going to be full-time interactive content regarding Revenge of the Sith, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, and New Hope. The list goes on. There's going to be a ton of different interactive videos. I have one that'll be coming out that has to do with Return of the Jedi. So I'm really excited that I'm going to be continuing this, and I do want to have a ton of different creators come on the channel and also collaborate and join me in these interactive what ifs, because I know that you guys love them and you miss them. And this is something that I will be doing full time on this YouTube channel. So if you love the interactive content, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on. We're hitting 200,000 subscribers this year. It's going to be insane. Join the community. I cannot wait to bring more to the table. It's going to be amazing. Thanks again. Take care. Have a phenomenal day. Peace out.